So the end of the year is fast approaching, and I had a lot of books that I was excited about that were coming out in 2021, and I didn't read like any of them. So I'm gonna try to fix that in this video. Hi, my name is Sarah Freshly, and welcome back to Freshly Read Books. So I'm not good at reading new releases. Like, I want to be, I see them, I get excited about them, like I'll see people posting about new releases, but I always feel guilty for not reading the books that I've had on my shelf longer, and so I'll usually gravitate towards those first. And then I just never read new releases and am never on time to talk about anything ever. But I didn't want to see the end of 2021 come without me reading some of the books that I most wanted to read. So I figured I'd make a video about it, and then that gives me the excuse to read the ones that I was most excited about. But let's talk through the books that I am so excited to be reading and finally be making time to read. Some of them came out earlier this year, some of them like just came out, but they are all by authors that I have read before and really enjoyed. So first up we have Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I've read almost every Riley Sager book except for Final Girls and this one here, and I do plan on reading them all. And then also I'd love to get into his works that aren't under the Riley Sager pseudonym. He's written under another pseudonym and then also his own name. And I'm curious to know like what the differences are there, and that is supposed to be a future video, although I've been saying this for like a year now, so I'll get there. I just need to like read the books, which is funny because I love reading Riley Sager's books. I've really enjoyed the ones that I've read so far, and yet here I am taking forever on this video. Next up we have Andy Weir's Project Hail Mary. I've read The Martian and also, what's his other one? I think it's called Artemis? Maybe, which I think are his only other books. Artemis I liked but didn't love. It was my first book by Andy Weir. Obviously I liked it enough though to read The Martian, which I had already seen as a movie, but I loved The Martian. I think that that's a fantastic book. If you've seen the movie, you haven't read the book, I still recommend reading the book. I think that it's fun and entertaining enough that you won't feel disappointed in yourself for having seen the movie first, like I thought I would feel, but didn't. I just had the best time. So I'm excited to read Project Hail Mary. Next up we have Colson Whitehead's Harlem Shuffle. I've read one book by Colson Whitehead, but it was enough to get me hooked on his writing style. The book that I read was called Zone 1, I think. It was a zombie book. I actually have a video where I talk about 3 zombie books, and that is one of them if you want to see my full thoughts on that book. But the writing style alone, I was like, yeah, okay, I need to pick up more. I haven't read Underground Railroad yet, but it is definitely on my list as well. But I'm too excited about this book to wait until I've read other books by him. I think that's another problem I have with new releases. Like, I get this weird thing where I feel like I have to read an author's earlier books in order to feel okay reading their new releases. For example, with Riley Sager, I kept telling myself like I should read Final Girls before I get to Survive the Night. But like, why? There's no reason for that. It's one of those like self-imposed things that I didn't realize I was doing to myself. And so I'm not gonna do it to myself this time. And I'm going to allow myself to both read Survive the Night by Riley Sager and also Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. I'm so excited for this video and these books. So the first book that I finished was Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I'm having a hard time because I didn't love this book, but let me start with what it's about. So this book follows Charlie, who is she's a student at a college. She recently lost her best friend. She ends up deciding that she wants to leave campus, that she doesn't want to stay here anymore. She's not in a well enough frame of mind to be like continuing with school or anything, or to even be there. She'd rather just go home to stay with her grandmother, which leads her to finding a ride from like a rideshare board that's at school. So this book is essentially that car trip. So the Survive the Night that they're talking about is the night of that road trip. So the first half of this book I found pretty boring and predictable. I hate using the word predictable because I feel like it's all about what types of thrillers you've read or movies you've seen. And also I don't think that totally takes away from the enjoyment of it. Like, there wasn't enough happening that made it okay that the book was as predictable as it was in that first stage. Also, I had a hard time connecting with the main character. I think that how she was very understandable, but there were certain decisions that she made or the way she would think about a certain thing that I found very difficult to believe that she would do or think in a situation, if that makes sense. And then there was a section in the middle area-ish where I just got really annoyed at the main character and her decisions, and it was so infuriating that I'm not sure that, like, if this was a different author, like an author I'd never read before and that I didn't like trust as much to write a good ending, I might have just given up. Like, that's on the level that I was at. And I can't think of a thriller book I've ever DNF'd. So, and then the last like third of the book, I was like, okay, like I appreciated what Riley Sager was doing through that section and the way the story progressed, I guess, after the first like 2/3 of the book. So yeah, overall, this is kind of disappointing for me. I'm happy that the last part of it went the way that it did, and that definitely brought my enjoyment back around, because otherwise, like if it was like the first part of the book, this would be one of like my least favorite reads of the year, which is so weird for me to say because I've really liked all the Riley Sager books that I've read so far. Anyways, that is Survive the Night complete. I will check in when I have another update. Scout and I are here to tell you about Project Hail Mary. She's very sleepy. So, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. So good, so good. I am so pleased with how much I liked this book because I really like Andy Weir. Like, I really loved The Martian. That was such a fun read. And then Artemis I liked, but it wasn't like quite on that same level. Like, I definitely had a fun time reading it. I enjoyed it. I knew for sure that I would continue to pick up books by him, but I wanted something on that same level of The Martian. And now, not only have I got it, but I think that I might prefer this one to The Martian. Like, if you're into space novels that are pretty fast-paced and about like that problem-solving element, then this is definitely a book you should consider picking up, as is The Martian, honestly. But I had so much fun reading this one. So basically the premise, we are following Ryland Grace, who is like, bless you, who is a scientist that wakes up on a spaceship, not knowing like what's going on at all. He's got basically this like kind of amnesia. So he's waking up and he's like in this containment sleep bed thing. So he wakes up in this, and then and he's like in a room, but like a spaceship, like a compartment of the spaceship with 2 other similar beds like his, presumably his crewmates, but both of them are dead. So now he's alone on the spaceship, doesn't know what he's doing here, doesn't remember his own name, but does remember like basically all the science information or the technical information that he has gained throughout his life. He has like a great problem-solving mind and is working on figuring out like what's going on, why he's here, and then slowly you get the trickle of information about his past at the same time that he does. And it's such a great way to tell a story like this, because a lot of times in these types of books you are like, ugh, fine, like let's get the back information, whatever. But because you're on this journey with Ryland, it feels different, and you want him to know as much as you want to know. So it's just done so well. I think that that's such a smart premise just in general before you even really get into what the story's about, like the meat of the story. It had tons of like moments that were like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen next? I don't even want to like go too much into it because I think so much of this book could be spoiled, because it just like consistently changes as it goes on. I just want to say that if this is a book that seems even remotely up your alley, definitely pick it up. It's so much fun. With that, I am on to the final book, Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. Kitty, did you have anything to say? Anything to add? I thought it would be cute if I like brought my chair up to in front of my bookshelf instead of being beside it like I always am, but then I've just noticed that my bookshelves are like super skinny and they don't cover like all of the frames, so it looks a little weird. But do I want to do anything about it? Come on, Sarah. Be a good YouTuber that tries. You can do it. See, now that I've put in effort, I feel like this being the result of that effort, I'm not pleased with either, but I'm gonna go with it. Who am I today? Okay, so the last of my anticipated releases was Colson Whitehead's Harlem Shuffle, which was another good read. I don't feel like on the same level as I felt about, you know, Project Hail Mary, which I absolutely loved, but also this was a very different type of story, like very different, vastly different. And I think what I'm starting to understand about what I like about Colson Whitehead is just like these, not really spaces or communities that he builds, but like maybe spaces is the right word, but it's not just like physical space, it's also the interconnection between like the different characters, not just like the main character to other people, but then the other people with each other. And I think that, I don't know, he just does like a really great job with that. And I don't quite understand how to explain it, but hopefully as I read more from him, I'll get better at explaining it, because that's what I've really loved out of this book and out of Zone 1 by him. So this book is like more of a historical fiction, which typically is not my genre, but if it's more recent historical fiction, then I'm much more likely to pick it up. Also, if it's telling a perspective that's not white, then I'm more likely to pick it up. But reading historical fiction that is about other cultures, specifically other cultures that are in the US, is something that I've been really enjoying learning more about and like reading about. One of the things that I really liked about this story was just that I think that it really showcased the humanity rather than like the nationality, where you're approaching the system by looking at humans first and then seeing the system that they're in, rather than looking at the system and then seeing the humans that are in it. And it gives you more of a way to see and understand the people before seeing how the system is like so wrongly built and not serving these people well. So then it's kind of like this domino chain that happens of like events, of actions, but you understand why a lot better by really feeling for the people that are a part of the story. And I think that Colson Whitehead just did a great job of writing the main character, Ray Carney, where he, like, all of his actions make complete sense to the point that you, as the person reading, like, wants him to be making the actions that he's making. Whereas I feel like a lot of books or stories, movies, whatever, that are talking about a person that is kind of on like the edge of crime, where like they're trying to live this like good and, you know, straight path life, but also they kind of get dragged into like specific things because of where they grew up or who their family is, or, you know, XYZ reasons. I think that a lot of those stories, they don't do a great job of explaining or showing why that person is in it to begin with. It just felt like you really got a sense for there is no way forward, or very limited way forward, for Ray Carney unless he is going to at least partially be in this separate world. And he's like this very specific divide between these worlds, and it almost feels like he's like holding them together, like this world of illegitimacy and wrongdoing, crimes, all that, and also the world of like law-abiding citizens and like the world that's like presented to the outside. There's so many analogies about him being that, about his business being that, and like it's done so well. And I think that Colson Whitehead really nailed the nuances of that situation, because it made me understand his decisions. And I don't think I've ever felt that in like watching a movie that had like a similar type of main character. Like he wrote a great protagonist, is as best as I can say it. And so with that, I've read all 3 of my books here. Also, I kind of noticed that while I was doing this, I had picked 3 books that were from genres that are like my most read, my favorite genres, and I'd pick my most anticipated from each of those genres. So we have sci-fi, thriller, and then literary fiction. I think you could also call this historical fiction, which in that case it would not be considered my favorite genre, but if we stick it in the literary fiction category, which I definitely think it belongs in, then this would be like my most anticipated release in that genre. So I thought that that was kind of funny. But with that, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm so glad I was able to read a few of my most anticipated releases before the end of the year. I feel like I almost never prioritize books that have just come out or that are just about to come out. Like if I were to look back on my 2021 anticipated releases, which I think I put like 10 books on that, These are probably the only 3 that I've read. And actually, I don't even know if they were all on that list. Let me know what books have come out recently that you've been really wanting to read or have read and absolutely loved, or what new releases for 2022 that you're really excited about, so that I can then add those to the list and hopefully get to them by the end of 2022, maybe. But anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, consider subscribing and joining me for a whole nother year of reading after this one. My next videos are gonna be all the fun, like favorite books of 2021 and reading goals for 2022. Also looking at the reading goals I set last year. It's gonna be terrible because I already know did not do a great job on those goals. But that's okay. This time of year is all about being like, ooh, didn't do so great. I'm gonna do great next year though, right? Right. Anyways, bye.